we got to be careful as we come into this Halloween season or whatever that we don't play or experiment, like this kid said, with the demonic, with the Antichrist, because that's part of the downward spiral that takes place to get them in Antichrist relationships and Antichrist music and Antichrist video games, and and then eventually into Antichrist behavior.
Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome back to the Narrative Podcast. Mike Andrews, David Mahan, Aaron Baer, all here today. And because we are all here today for the first time in, I don't even know how long it's been, fellas, to be honest with you. But we're going to do something a little bit special. We're just going to kind of let it rip. We're going to have a conversation between the three of us and hopefully just give people all of the Mike, Aaron, and David that they've been missing for these last few weeks. I know you guys are excited.
David just negotiates hard on PTO when he comes in. Needs to take a few months off for his beauty rest, get his hair cut, all that kind of good stuff. So, apologies that we haven't all been together, but David just, his demands and his contract are so unbelievable.
Well, and I do have to say, Aaron, I noticed today you've got that twinkle in your eye that can only mean it's pumpkin spice season.
It is pumpkin spice season. That's right.
You're just
from one right there. Got another coffee here.
Just pumpkin spice season, and the NFL starting this weekend. You were just in your sweet spot, and the Cubs are playing well. So, all of Aaron's world is coming together.
The best part right now is that David's mic's not working, so he's. I think he's muted. You muted, David, or can you talk?
Man, I was feeling you guys too, bro. Like you missed it. I was getting you on the fantasy football season. That's
between you and the Lord now. That's a
fantasy football. Nothing like a bunch of guys fantasizing about other men at Center for Christian Virtue. I can tell you that.
Well, number one, David was just afraid because we had a bunch of ladies join the league, and he didn't want to get beat by some girls. Number two, that's just hurtful. That hurts my feelings. But
we've got some threatening women this season.
Yeah,
you can talk about me if you want.
Well, we're going to let it rip on some of the news topics that have been pretty hot and heavy online and in newspapers, if those are still a thing. I think some people still get newspapers. But one thing that actually broke while we were talking last week, Aaron, on our news segment was the Annunciation school shooting in Minnesota. And as more information has come out about that, there's just a lot of interesting aspects of it to talk about. We kind of covered the fact that people are quick to run to ideological corners when stuff like that happens. And as Christians, we're always looking for a different way to think through things. But I think maybe the most interesting things that came out of that are when we learn more about the shooter's motives. He had written that he thought that transitioning and using marijuana during his formative years really played a big role in what he was, the mental distress that he was experiencing that led him to do that horrible act.
Yeah. I gotta say, it's such a difficult thing to talk about, right? And to do so, not out of a place of just raw emotion, because I think for all of us, especially if you have kids, this hurts. And I'll say we had a pretty robust conversation with the Ohio Christian Education Network team on how we want to respond to this, because it is a trend now. You've got two examples of transgender shooters, and it's not like, hey, they had brown hair and they went in there, therefore all brown hair people are doing this.
Right.
It's like, no, these people in both situations, both their transgender identity played a role in their animosity for specifically a Christian school, and they targeted not just any school, but a Christian school because of their profession of Christ. And so we really wrestled through and prayed through, all right, Lord, how should we respond to this? And ultimately put out a statement saying, hey, we have to be honest about there is something harmful and evil about this transgender ideology, or at least the way in certain aspects it's driving people to have animosity towards Christians, and especially Christian schools. I mean, it's one thing to be mad at Christians, but to target Christian kids is a whole other type of evil. We have to acknowledge that, right? If we were talking about this internally, like if a bunch of small businesses were being looted the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, would have put out a statement and say, "Hey, small businesses are being targeted." So we felt we had to speak out on behalf of those Christian schools. But to your point, Mike, the more we find out about this guy that walked in there, the more we are seeing that one, transgenderism is a mental illness, right? If you think you can fly, you have a mental illness. If you are a guy and you think you're a girl, you have a mental illness. If you're a guy and you think you're a truck, you have a mental illness. So the fact that the way mental illness played into this is something we have to wrestle with, and the reality that transgenderism in and of itself is a mental illness needs to be recognized.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of this. That when stories like this hit, right? We got two young people. Less than young people, right? I mean, they're 8 and 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
17 injured, 2 killed. Targeted during prayer. Kid went to that school, knew when they would be praying, knew it was the first major service of the year, specifically wanted to kill kids. I mean, that is huge, right? And there are some folks within the church, especially, that would say, we can't be talking about these other ancillary issues, right? We got to talk about these children. But if we want to prevent more children, we have to start taking deeper looks, right? It is about ideology with a lot of these kids. It is about drug addiction and psychosis with these kids. And yes, it is about political ideology. They're literally writing facts about all 3 of these categories on the magazines of the weapons. And it is about just outright darkness and hatred, antichrist hatred to God and his people. All 4 of those things are true, and we have to look at all those things. And in terms of the mental disorder, people probably would take offense to what you just said, Aaron, that being trans-identified or transgender is a mental disorder. What they need to realize is that we've always known this. It was in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the APA for years. I think going all the way back to 1980, didn't change until like less than 10 years ago, when the activists over at a WPATH changed that diagnosis. It really put pressure on the APA to change the DSM 5. And so everybody has known that this is a mental disorder, or transvestic ideology is a mental disorder. But what this kid is saying, he regretted that he even experimented with both marijuana and the gender stuff. He admitted that this was just, a big experiment that has messed up or effed up his head. And he regrets ever experimenting with them. And so, even though I would say, man, I just hate hearing about the ideological ways that these pundits are spinning it. And sometimes it does seem very gross. I will say that. Some people just go too far on the ideological piece or on the political piece. But we do have to start taking a very serious look at these things and say, what is it about these young people? And most of them are young white males. What is it that is causing this break? There's a switch in our head that keeps a human from taking another human's life. It's very difficult. There's a break that must occur, and to say that this is just simply somebody was depressed or somebody just hated Trump. It's usually more, maybe it involves all 4 of those categories, right? Mental illness and drug addiction and all that.
Oh yeah.
But until we start taking a serious look at all of it and not just brushing it under the rug until the next killing, we're going to keep seeing this stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, I was particularly struck by the addiction piece that you brought up there, David, and highlighted a little bit when you look at, again, what the manifesto said about not even experimenting with those things. But then also there's some reports out there that he worked at a dispensary as well. And just kind of this overexposure to, I don't want to get you started on about how marijuana is not a gateway drug or how that's a talking point, David, but it just like when you see something like this, with horrific levels of violence, that the perpetrator himself is drawing a direct line between act and the drug. How much longer can this stuff be ignored?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that law enforcement and especially our state legislators are going to have to understand is that we really, really need you to get your eyes off of the quote $700 million in tax revenue that these clowns are saying that they're going to produce every year. That, guys, you need to get your eyes on what this guy is saying, that, this is an area that he has been experimenting with. He has no idea what these two things are doing to his mind and his body. And many legislators, before we pass these laws, we have no idea what 90% THC does to a kid's brain. We have no idea. But because of tax revenue.
Real quick, Dave, I want to push on that. When you say kid's brain, right? The male brain, I mean, this is stuff that the stats we hear all the time, continues to develop until 25.
Right.
So even if we say, well, no, you could smoke marijuana after 21 legally, right? The male brain is still developing at that point, right? And we're introducing a powerful psychedelic drug. The other piece of it, though, that is just the part that gets me fired up at these state lawmakers is just introducing more marijuana into a community means more kids are going to get their hands on it, right? Mm-hmm. Like it just is a basic reality. So the ideas of like, oh, we're going to do this safely, we're going to do this responsibly, and we're not going to let kids get their hands on it is just nonsense.
Yeah, psychosis is clearly one of those things that breaks a brain to the point where it could cause someone to take a life that would never generally take that life.
And irreparably breaks the brain, right? Like when there's a certain amount of marijuana that you can smoke as a kid that does that. Now, not everybody who smokes marijuana, right, is going to end up in that place, but these are permanent damages that are done to minds by these drugs. And just to David's point, like, the gateway drug conversation is so stupid because one, yes, we do see people move on from marijuana to other drugs, but two, even if a person never moves on to other drugs besides marijuana, it's damaging just in and of itself.
Yeah.
And it's just a smokescreen, if you will, for what they're actually doing.
And now that we're coming up on the quote Halloween season, I do want to bring out something else that unless you've really seen some of these deeper coverages of what this guy did, he literally this was Antichrist, right? The Bible says the Antichrist spirit is real and it's here and it's always been here. This guy's usually he literally wrote, "Where is your God?" on the magazine. Literally wrote, this is for the kids. He took a target that he would use for target practice, and he put the image of Christ on the head of the target. This was, as much as we mourn the loss of these kids, the motivation was not just the particular children that died. The motivation was he had a hatred to God, and because of his hatred to God, he took it out on God's people. And we got to be careful as we come into this Halloween season or whatever that we don't play or experiment, like this kid said, with the demonic, with the Antichrist, because that's part of the downward spiral that takes place to get them in Antichrist relationships and Antichrist music and Antichrist video games and then eventually into Antichrist behavior. And again, just like we don't understand anything about marijuana, I think we understand even less about the demonic and how we play with it here in America.
Yeah, that's a good word, David, and a good reminder with, as you said, Halloween coming up. One interesting policy thing that's popped up in response to the Minnesota shooting is the Trump administration at least floating the idea of banning trans people from owning guns. Now, this is interesting because I think we'd all here on the podcast say we are Second Amendment people. We are all for, the right to bear arms. But what is interesting about this conversation is that it does open up that dialogue. As you pointed out, David, this transgenderism was considered a mental illness at one point, and Are we seeing that maybe come back into the realm of possibility of reclassifying it as a mental illness, and then that may have impact on someone's ability to own and possess a weapon?
Yeah, transvestic disorder is how it was originally, put in the DSM, and again, this was been referenced since around 1980, and it was just basically ideological activism that changed it. The World Health Organization changed it, I think, in 2018, and APA, right around 2018 or 2019, something like that. But just a handful of gender ideologues put pressure on another small group, a professional group, medically professional group, and to change this diagnosis. And so it's not based on science, just like none of the rest of it. If 80% of America and 80% of the state of Ohio realize that this stuff is not based on science, then you got to realize also that it's just activism, scientific activism, that even changed the definition in the first place, so that they would now be allowed to. They didn't want to be considered a disorder, right? However, if you don't have some kind of diagnosis in there, they wouldn't be able to pay for insurance, wouldn't be able to pay for some of their procedures. And so there was this weird balance that had to be struck with this group. And so that, yeah, it's an issue. It's an incongruence now versus a disorder. That said, I don't know if I line up with the Trump administration to say that because you are you have a disorder, even if it's transgenderism, then they can come and take my guns. Matter of fact, in America right now, it requires more than that. Not just a diagnosis of mental illness, but you literally a judge has to say, okay, we're going to involuntarily put you into a mental institution, or somebody has to deem you as a threat to yourself or others. Those are pretty high bars. But just a diagnosis of a mental disorder is not enough for the government to take away your Second Amendment rights.
David's hugging his shotgun right now, and you guys can't see it on TV, but he's saying,
"You darn tootin'."
The
I'm gonna take it.
I'll say I agree with David on so much of that. I think that to me, the encouraging thing is, one, can we have a conversation again about the reality of what transgenderism is?
That's right.
But I think as well, when I saw this, it made me think about another city in Ohio. I think it was Whitehall, just passed a quote unquote ban on conversion therapy. This is what Equality Ohio and the LGBT groups push from town to town. And it's 10 years ago when they were doing this, we used to fight these things all the time. And we still think these laws are terrible, right? But they're essentially unenforceable, because what they mean is they're banning conversion therapy of trying to tell a transgender kid or a gay kid, hey, maybe you're not gay, maybe you're not trans, and counseling back to healthy relationships. That's what they're going for. The funny thing is, their conversion therapy ban doesn't ban them from going the other way, right? From trying to convince a kid that he is trans, right? That's what we banned in the SAFE Act. But honestly, these laws, they're on the books in a lot of municipalities. Some states have these laws. They're terrible laws. They're like I said, they're just unenforceable because they're ostensibly speech bans, but they're used to silence people. They're used to have a chilling effect on folks. But if we can begin that conversation again about how transgenderism is a mental illness, that's really going to make these laws fall even faster. Because the more medical professionals we can get saying, hey, this actually isn't healthy for you. You should not be doing this. And you especially should not be, if you're already in mental distress, you especially should not be injecting yourself with cross-sex hormones. That's going to only make things worse. That would be a major step forward. So again, this felt like, when I saw the story, like quintessential Trump trolling, of just like, hey, what if we started doing this? Of just to send the media into chaos on it. But the thing is, we've seen so many times, how many times as something with the Trump administration started with a troll, and then they realize, hey, that's a great idea. We should actually look at this, and something comes out.
Speaking in the realm of great ideas.
Well, this would
just-
be a first if David has a great idea.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Hear me out. So why don't if we're going to say, you know, the transgender thing is a disorder or mental illness, what about all of the people like the legislators who don't even believe in this stuff but want to change laws so that we all have to line up with this false reality? Let's diagnose that as a mental illness so that we can get rid of them, get that seat freed up for somebody that's got some sense.
Right.
Now, y'all know Trump and those guys. Get that up to the guys up there and see if I'm on it right.
I'm on it, Dave.
All right, you heard it here first. Breaking news on the narrative that David's gonna clean house with his new executive order
of the General Assembly.
Well, I also think that when we talk about this as a cultural conversation, we've noted before that there maybe we're past the tipping point on this, or maybe tipping point's not even the right term, but kind of the cultural swell is starting to ebb a little bit. And there was a story this week from author Malcolm Gladwell, who is pretty well known, basically saying that he felt bullied and pressured into taking a stance on the men and women's sports issue, affirming that initially, and now kind of taking his own words back and really coming out strong in favor of, you know, women play against women, and maybe even peeling back the curtain a little bit to the amount of pressure that he was under to affirm the lie that, oh, it's fine if men and women compete against each other in sports.
Yeah, I want to hear what Mahan has to say about this, because I got takes, but I want to hear what he thinks.
No, I love it. I love the fact that this guy for 3 years knew that he was living a lie. Right? That this joker gets up on a panel, lies through his teeth, and then for 3 years lives with that lie, and finally says, "Hey, I was a coward." And I think the reason why I love it, guys, is because it's not about transgenderism. It's not about, you know, it's not about, you know, politics. It's about cowardice and selfishness, right? This guy felt like, you know, if I don't line up with this lie and speak against what I know to be true about science, about not even religion, just science and just how the world works, then I might lose my credibility. I might lose my book deals. And so for 3 years, he's been living a lie. And for the, you know, on the same way, Mike, I mean, I see that in the church too. You know, a lot of folks, a lot of our pastors that didn't want to speak up about this stuff, now that it's an 80-20 issue and we have a governor veto override and everybody now is on this truth train. Where were we 5-6 years ago when we were saying little girls and boys were being physically mutilated and chemically sterilized, right? Where were they and why didn't they speak up? Because of the same two reasons that we getting on Gladwell. Cowardice and selfishness, right? It wasn't about kids being harmed. It wasn't about hurting somebody's feelings or somebody being able to receive Christ or not. It was about, will I lose congregants and will I lose tithe, right? And how will this affect me? And I think we got to be real clear with ourselves so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, because when you're given a public platform, especially as a Christian, and I don't know Gladwell's position specifically. I think he's kind of done some stuff that would make me think that he probably is, or is at least open to the ideas of Christianity. But to be people of truth is not always the easiest thing. And for churches where they're supposed to be shaping and equipping their congregants on a weekly basis to go out into the world and deal with these issues.
And protecting the flock.
Yes.
Those that struggle with gender ideology and those that are just being indoctrinated by both of them need to be protected. And if the body can't engage in that activity, then something's wrong.
Yeah. And what I really appreciated too here about Gladwell's comments as he sought to unwind what he had said on the podcast was that he was acknowledging that it was never about acceptance. It was about, I think he used the phrase, it was about dominance. Like they didn't want a seat at the table. They wanted to completely change the way that or completely buy into the way that culture was talking about gender identity and sexuality and those types of things. And he just finally said, that's enough. And I've always agreed with this position, but now it's 3 years too late. But at least I'm coming out and saying
he got punked. He got punked.
We've all been punked.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings on this one because
Okay. All right, here we go. Yep.
no, like
Sorry, Fit.
I'm obviously like I've listened and read Gladwell stuff for years. I think he has a lot of really interesting takes. I think his brand has been, he's the guy that's willing to go places other people don't go and have honest conversations when other people don't. And he's tried to kind of even put himself out there as a little edgy and things like that. And sorry, not to take this too close to home, David, but it reminds me of a certain church you went and spoke at and are never allowed to go back again. That like has this whole image of, or like wants to have this whole thing around, strength and countercultural and all that.
Progressive.
And in the moment when it's needed, put their head in the sand, right? And that's Gladwell, right? Like in the moment for Gladwell to really pay the cost, he didn't. And when he didn't, it was left to Riley Gaines and these girls that didn't have any platform to deal with it, right? So, again, as Christians, honestly, it was left to us. I mean, that's the other side of this, right? J.K. Rowling just had a tweet on this and was like, because it was really these young girls and women and these folks that were stood up. Really, was Christians that were really leading the cause in the States to fight this stuff. And so, as Christians, he's repentant, he's apologetic, and it's like, great, hey, forgiveness, all of that is 100% there. But also, there just comes a time of like, Malcolm, your credibility, what he does depends on his credibility as a truth speaker, right? He's a journalist, all of that. I don't want to say this is disqualifying from him ever writing again, but this is just one of these things. I'm just never going to take Malcolm Gladwell seriously again, because when it counted most, he was a coward, and on something. This is the other thing about all this trans stuff, something that's not hard, right? Especially for someone who, like, his whole thing is like, he looks at scientific data and all that. It's not hard to go Google the women's gold medal 100-meter race time, and then go Google the Ohio High School Athletic Association, the most recent track competition from your local school district. And you'll see, hey, any of these high school boys would have medaled in the women's track competition, right? I mean, it's not that complicated.
Their times would beat the top Olympic riders ever.
Right, exactly. And so it's just one of those things. Like for Gladwell, hey, I'm glad you're here. We want to keep bringing people in who are going to say this stuff and celebrate them. But it's a little too late.
Now, I don't know if it's just because I'm jaded and hurt and broken by how you guys talk about me and beat me up every week, but we can't just talk about the leadership, right? The Gladwells, the state legislators who don't believe this stuff but keep legislating dumb stuff and won't vote for the bathroom bill, won't vote to keep dudes out of girls' locker rooms. They don't believe that stuff, right? In their own districts, their own constituents don't believe that stuff. I have these conversations, but those they lead keep voting for them. Our pastors that won't speak up, we keep going to these churches. Like guys, and I know we've got 4,500 churches in the network, and again, it's just this stuff. I can't just look at the leaders and the ones that have huge followings and say, look how dumb they were. No. Guys, it took us 5 years to pass the SAFE Act. Why? Because it wasn't just the leaders who were cowards. They weren't being pressed or encouraged to have strength by the rest of us. And so we all
get,
have to own
just,
some of this
so
conversation.
we did get there though, right? I mean, that counts for something.
Over time.
Right? No, again, like, and it shouldn't have been hard, right? And by all means, but my thing on all this, and like, I do think, just to that point, Dave, and even before the Gladwells got there, I do think. I mean, I just had lunch the other day with a guy who runs a really large company. If I said the brand, you guys would all know it. And this is a guy, good Christian guy, all this kind of stuff. And when all the George Floyd stuff happened and the critical race theory stuff happened and all the crazy trans stuff started happening, he was one of those Christians that was like, okay, you're telling me there's like systematic problems here, or this person's under severe distress, and that I don't understand it. Okay, I want to be open. I want to hear you. And then realized over the last few years, oh, this is all just grift, right? This is all like the people pushing BLM are just going off and buying multi-million-dollar mansions in California, right? Like, this is this was all just a massive political ideology and grift. And they're like, I do see that in the church broadly in a different way than I'm seeing it with Gladwell. And that happened, I feel like, a few years ago, right? I think that was the story of how the 2024 election went the way it went, is that sometime in 23, 22, a lot of folks in the church started being like, oh, okay, this isn't real.
That leans into just the power of the cultural conversation, and an interesting story came out this week too about that, where Taylor Lorenz, in an article,
talking a Taylor Lorenz story on the narrative first.
How about that? But
it's going to tie in really well to our last story, or the last one we'll talk about. We'll keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. By all means, if you want to drive, I'll take my hand.
I'm excited to talk about a Taylor Lorenz story.
I know.
I've never talked about a Taylor Lorenz story on here before.
Who is Taylor Lorenz? I'm gonna just be real. Like,
listen, she was too woke for the Washington Post. She got fired from the Washington Post for being too woke. She was like, she's still wearing a mask to this day. Just sorry. Like,
that's the standard. That's the
enough said.
Yeah, that's the sliding scale. Like, are you still wearing a mask? You are.
Yes. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway, this is an article she wrote for Wired.com that exposed this initiative by the 1630 Fund, our friends at the 1630 Fund. I know you love talking about them, Aaron, but they had rolled out this project essentially trying to find these social media influencers, paying them upwards of $8,000 a month to post about those core liberal talking points, the Democratic Party platform, in an attempt to create that social media echo chamber that's just going over and over and over the Democratic Party platform. And there's a lot on this from a comms director standpoint that I could get into. But Aaron, what were your thoughts when you saw this article?
Well, first off, now I knew how Mahan was able to afford that cabin down in Hocking Hills. But second of all, because I know what we pay him, and it ain't cabin money.
The vial of the fittest.
No, so when I saw this, I mean, it was the things that we've been talking about for years. I mean, on the podcast, and that every time I'm interacting with a media member, I'll throw this out there at them, because it's one of the biggest storylines that just goes completely uncovered. Just the other day, Governor DeWine responded to President Trump's request for National Guard troops to come to Washington, D.C. Governor DeWine consented to it and allowed the troops to go. And literally within 24 hours, there was a protest at the Ohio State House with hundreds of people with professionally made signs about this really obscure order that Mike DeWine made. And, of course, the media covers it. Oh, my gosh, all this outrage over Mike DeWine's order. And one, I bet the vast majority of the people listening to this podcast are obviously very intelligent and good-looking people. And I'm sure they didn't hear about this order. This wasn't a widely publicized or controversial thing he did. And two, my tweet on this was, hey, like, as someone who organizes protests and rallies, I can tell you it ain't easy and it ain't cheap. And doing something this fast over this obscure shows people are being paid, right? Like, I can, yes, indeed. If I'm paying people, I can call them to say, hey, we have this project we're working on. Can you come show up? But if I'm just organizing volunteers to show up on a Saturday at downtown Columbus in the middle of a hot summer, will you come stand with these signs and make your own signs and bring them that are professionally printed? It's not going to happen. And so this Lorenz story, which is shocking that she wrote it, but good for her, just shows, that all of these folks, and it's some people that have, hundreds of thousands of followers, but this is just the money of the left, where people that have like tens of thousands of followers, they can pay with talking points, and it, the story gets into how there's certain things they weren't allowed to say. They couldn't endorse certain candidates. I mean, it really was restricting. And this is how the Trump campaign would always put out these supercuts of all of these people using the same talking points. And here's the story of, hey, this is how this happened, right? And go figure, it has to come out from Wired, not from the New York Times or one of these other quote unquote mainstream publications.
Yeah, and a couple of things that stood out to me about this, Aaron, just from the work that I have to do on social media for CCV. Like, number one, it is really, really challenging to get some politically charged topics out there, even when they're not that charged. Like, I don't know, trying to promote our Cleveland Gala, which is coming Friday, September 26th with Charlie Kirk.
Get your tickets, get your tables, almost sold out.
That's right. And
the summit, sorry.
We'll get there. But to have to make sure that the disclaimer is set, that this has been paid for by Center for Christian Virtue, because Meta is going to flag it as a social or political issue. And then if I don't do that, they're not going to let me publish it. And on Instagram, it's a whole nother set of hoops that I got to jump through. Are they circumventing that process by doing this, paying influencers under the table and not really saying what they're doing? But then also, when you talk about campaigns, you have some max spending limits that you can hit. And if you don't have to report what you're paying the influencers, that's a very, very gray area that should be nonpartisan. You should have some issues with that.
Oh, I mean, again, and the way they skirt around all of these lies, and it's all 1630 Fund, which when you hear 1630 Fund, that's George Soros. These are the same people, and Taylor mentioned this in her story. These are the same people that put millions of dollars into the Ohio abortion amendment fight. They put millions of dollars into the redistricting fight last year. A lot of this is foreign money. And again, this is just that foreign influence and sort of Marxist influence seeping into society. And man, you go to some of these, it's funny. The story actually leads with talking about some TikTok influencer in Columbus I'd never heard before. And I went to her page, and it really, one of the video, I don't know how these videos get 75,000 views. They're just crazy, terrible videos, stupid, boring videos, but they have huge reaches. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, if you want to learn how to think more about these issues, you should come to the Essential Summit on Thursday, October 2nd in downtown Columbus, featuring Willie Robertson. It's going to be a great day. Get your tickets now. That's also getting pretty close to our max capacity.
Yeah, we're almost sold out there. That one, last year we sold out the day or two before. I think we're going to sell out there probably a week out. So get those tickets now.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day. Well, we have one more story that we wanted to cover today.
March for Life the next day too. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Can't forget that. One more story is the RFK hearings that were going on in the Senate this week. And guys, I don't even know where to start on that. It's been fiery. It's been entertaining as much as it's been informative. So let me open the floor. What'd you think as you watched or read some of the hot takes on RFK's performance in front of Congress?
What'd you think, Dave? I mean, I got a lot of places to go with him because that was must-see TV in my opinion, but I like watching congressional hearings.
Nerd.
I stopped watching him about a year ago. No, but I don't know where I'm at with him.
Yeah.
I am thankful that he's shaking things up, right? That big pharma, all those guys hate his guts, and for that reason alone, I think he's interesting to watch. And it may be two extremes, one extreme to another, and I'm just thinking, hopefully we find, a happy medium in the middle. But I love watching him kind of dismantle haters. That is fun. I mean, he's got that. I mean, aside from his voice, right?
Oh, it's so
He's
painful.
out of here tomorrow.
Yep.
It's got to be the most unhealthy man on the planet. Dude could do more push-ups and pull-ups than Hexeth, right? And so he's a funny dude. But just watching him dismantle some of these haters has been amazing. But I'm not sure where I stand with him, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's I signed on to letters supporting him for HHS secretary. And I got some pushback on that because he's not pro-life. And he would say that, I admit that, right? And I frankly think if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd support RFK for being HHS secretary, I'd say you were crazy. But a few things on that. One, he said from jump, and it's turned out to be better than true, that he's going to follow the president's guidance and leadership on the life issue, and he's done that. And even at this hearing, Senator Daines asked him about the ethics and public policies, the EPPC study on mifepristone, and will the FDA be reconsidering the label and the regulations on it? Because basically Biden made it so that you could just send these pills out anywhere. And he said, yeah, we're working on that right now. They're actually they're recreating the EPP study to verify it. And then hopefully if they're able to verify it, they're going to come out and they have to. I mean, it's experientially, we know the pill is way more dangerous than the label says, all of that. But to me, this is what RFK is, what American politics is about and what it's supposed to be in many ways. Because here's a guy who isn't a Republican, isn't someone who naturally lines up with all of our worldview, but does see on a majority issues, he agrees with us, right? And when you're trying to build, when you're in a huge country like ours of over 330 million people, and you're trying to build a coalition to get to 50% plus one, you got to be able to make friends and say, hey, well, we can work together on these things we agree on, and we can still disagree on these other things that are just fine, right? I'm sure on taxation policy and things like that, on regulation, we would have very different views than RFK. But in these areas, especially with, my goodness, the clearing out of the CDC, and just hearing someone say, these are the people that put masks on our kids.
That's right.
Right? These are the people that supported, as J.D. Vance said, these are the people that supported child mutilation. Every one of them should be fired, right? It's like the Malcolm Gladwell thing. Like, hey, glad you're on our side now. Glad you agree with this, but your credibility is gone. You don't get to be a leader on this area anymore, right?
Yeah, it's like you got the far left being punked out of the whole gender thing.
Yeah.
And then got the nerve to call him a quack when they were espousing all that dumb science.
No, that's like, I'm sorry. Like, sure, go get a job in your local community as a doctor. That's fine, but you don't get to lead the CDC anymore. That's not right. And even to, like, I'll say, I don't know if I've gone full Maha, but I'm almost there in many ways. Just insofar as when you actually listen to what RFK is saying about vaccines and things like that. And I actually think the way he's leading HHS, he's done I think a really great job of setting aside his personal views. I think he has some personal views on vaccines that I'd probably disagree with, but all he's doing there is saying, hey, we're not going to let the pharmaceutical companies anymore dictate the terms on which we approve things.
I love
right. And so, for example, I thought FDA Director Makari did a great job on this on CNN the other day. Of like, listen, we're not telling people they can't get the COVID vaccine. We're just saying it hasn't. The clinical trials it's gone through haven't reached the standard we typically hold everybody else to say this is a recommended vaccine. So if you want it, if you want to go get it. But we're not telling people this is recommended because it's not meeting that threshold. And you just saw it. Honestly, I just went through this at the doctor myself the other couple months ago. Was going in for my regular checkup. Came out fit as a fiddle. They said I actually got stronger. I don't know how that's possible, but it's all true.
Maybe. Did you get your hearing checked while you were there by chance?
They do a strength.
Gotten stronger and better looking, and I was like, I don't know. It happens, right?
I bind it, Jesus.
But the doc in there was tried to give me the say I needed to get the hepatitis B vaccine, and I said what? Or hepatitis C is one of those. One of the
Probably
and I was like, well, I'm a married man, and like there's really nothing like why? Well, you could get a cut, and then that cut could get hepatitis. What? But this is just like, and yes, you look these things up. These doctors, these clinics, these hospitals make money on that kind of stuff, right? It makes sense, right? If I sell more, bagels at my Bagel Street diner down here, like I'm going to make more money. And so just having the CDC and the FDA be more honest about that is encouraging. And then having RFK call out Elizabeth Warren for taking almost $1 million from the pharmaceutical companies and carrying their water is also just hilarious.
You lost me at Hep C. I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. And I can't even say nothing back because it's inappropriate. And
see, Christian podcast, David. Christian podcast.
Yeah, lock it down, Mahan. Lock it down. Well, good times today, guys. It was great being able to catch up and do a little deeper dive on some of these news stories than we normally get to do when we're limited to 15 minutes or so. It can be kind of hard to have that wide-ranging conversation, but appreciated the opportunity today, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your thoughts on those issues. And hopefully this is a good one for the listeners and helps situate them kind of biblically and just how to think critically on a lot of stories that have been flying around lately.
And shout out to Sam for helping find great stories for us this week. Great work, Sam.
Thanks, guys.
Hey,
whoa,
getting a cameo on the podcast this week. How about that?
Not like an angel.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in today. It's been great being with you, and we'll catch you next week on The Narrative. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.